What's up guys, TSJAwesome 628 here, back again with another F1 2020 My Team career mode, this time for the Russian Grand Prix. First obviously we sort out our activity timeline as per usual, and the podium celebration party is a very good one to do as it gives you quite a lot of bonuses. And then obviously considering that it takes up one day, we decided to do the other one day activity, which is the driver promotional filming, to fill up our slot. Okay, so we're just going to go straight to the weekend, and it's completely dry, as usually the case in this part of Russia for when the Russian Grand Prix happens. Don't know why, I don't think I've really ever had a wet race in Russia. But we're just going to put an aerodynamics upgrade on, but it's to help our straight line speed because it's going to be a drag reduction upgrade. And that should be able to come in the next few weeks. And so we head into qualifying. You just witnessed what happened on my first run, and that wasn't the greatest moment, but we go out for another run because obviously we half flipped the car in a way, like we put it on its two wheels. And this run put us in a decent position, and it put us in P2 provisionally, with Jack Aitken up in P5, so that's pretty good for the team. And as we fast forward towards the end of the session, we finished P5 in the end, and Jack Aitken finishes in P7, so a pretty good qualifying one for the team. Obviously there was the minor damage, or it was major damage, but that I got from the incident on the first lap. But I hope that that will not be an occurrence during the race, and indeed the upcoming qualifying sessions. But it is the two Alfa Romeos, the two Haas cars, and the two Williams cars that don't make it out of Q1, so that is what usually happens. I said Alpha Tauri is sometimes in the mix, but the other cars should be making it through to Q2. And well, talking of Q2, let's get on to Q2. So on for our first lap in Q2, and I think it's our only lap in Q2 because there wasn't really much needed now. We're expected to be able to make it through to Q3 in each race now, considering I think the last time we didn't make it to Q3 would have been Britain, but the AI are really OP. And well, we set our lap, and it was enough for P1 at the time, but overall it was P2 in the session, and Jack Aitken was down in P13 though, so I thought that he'd be able to continue his pace, and he was 3/10 slower than he was in Q1, interestingly, and the 3/10 would have put him right on the edge of being able to make it through to Q3. So slightly disappointing from him then. I'd have hoped he'd be able to join me, but it's looking good for us, as only Valtteri Bottas was quicker than us in this session. But let's see what we can do in Q3, because I don't know whether we'll have the pace or not. On to our first lap in Q3 then, and I could see that we weren't probably the quickest car this weekend from this lap. And when we got towards the end of it, into the final couple of corners, Verstappen set a 1:29.6, which isn't that quick, but we come and set a 1:29.5, which I could see was not a very good lap, and I knew I could definitely improve on it. And you look here, Bottas 1:29.0 and Hamilton 1:29.4. That is important, I'm just saying. Those two times there should be important, because obviously I set a 1:29.5. But we come to our second lap in Q3, and we don't really have a second lap in Q3 because, as you can see in the time at the top right, I have not managed to make it to the finish line in time to set another lap time, and that is a bit of a user error, and we end up P4 in the session. So one of the Ferraris must have displaced us, and I thought it would just be one of the Ferraris that displaced us, considering we were already behind the two Mercedes.
Let's have a quick look at those who will be fronting the grid. Leclerc, Vettel and Valtteri Bottas. Well, that wraps up qualifying, but don't worry, we'll be back tomorrow as we head into the Grand Prix.
So, a very strange glitch here. I immediately checked the race director because apparently Bottas never set his 129.0 and Hamilton never set his 129.4. And I think their final sectors are glitched. Because if you look at their final sector on their first lap, it's about 1.2 seconds slower than it should be. And that would put them setting quite a bit quicker laps, obviously, than they improved on their second lap. So it wasn't like massively quicker. But I think we got lucky to even finish P4 because the Ferraris both displaced us. And they're going to get a very lucky front row lockout because, well, Bottas and Hamilton should have been 1-2 in that session because they were much quicker cars, and they set the lap times to be P1 and P2, but the game denied them that. But starting from P4 for tomorrow's session.
Driver grid order for today's exciting race. A fantastic effort from Charles Leclerc yesterday puts him on pole, and starting alongside in P2 is Sebastian Vettel. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Thomas, Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton and Albon, Perez, Stroll, Norris and Carlos Sainz. Ricciardo, Bottas, they'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Pierre Gasly and Giovinazzi, Magnussen, Aitken, Kimi Raikkonen and Roman Grosjean, Ocon, Russell, Kvyat and Nicholas Latifi.
So we're now starting P3 because of Valtteri Bottas' grid penalty. Strategy is just a simple one stop, so I think we'll just get into the race. And we're going to go for 5 red lights here, and I really believe we can beat the Ferraris because the reason I said we weren't quick was because we looked much slower than the Mercs, but we do get a good start and I feel like we're roughly paced with them. We overtake Vettel immediately and we're going to have a look at Leclerc, and obviously it's a very long run down to the next braking zone. We have the outside line, we do outbrake ourselves slightly though, and if that was real life we would have got a 5-second penalty because the FIA would have made us go round that stupid bollard and we'd probably end up crashing into the wall like Sainz did and spinning back off into the track, but we're just going to ignore that. We're still going side by side with Charles Leclerc, and here's the inside line for the corner, but we go round the outside, extending the track slightly to complete the move, but we keep P1 and we put out quite a bit of a gap on him at the end of lap 1. The gap's 1.4 seconds, but he gains quite a bit on the final corner, it seems. And there wasn't really that much to do. Leclerc didn't put me under that much pressure. And I really felt like, at this point, if Hamilton could have just cleared the two Ferraris, he'd have caught up to me and probably easily won this race. But for the next few laps, we were just waiting to see whether Hamilton could get past the two Ferraris, and how much of a gap I could pull on Leclerc while waiting, because it was going up by about 2 to 3 tenths a lap. So another fastest lap at the end of lap 3, as we had been setting, and the gap is 1.7 to Leclerc. But we head on to the end of lap 4, and one car is falling rapidly down the order, and the yellow flag has come out, and that car is Sebastian Vettel. So Ferrari's front row lockout hasn't delivered into at least a double podium, because like he did in the real life 2019 Grand Prix, Sebastian Vettel has failed to finish the Russian Grand Prix. But back to our race, and end of lap 5, we're now 2.3 ahead of Leclerc. Hamilton has been promoted up a position now, and he is still right on the back of Charles Leclerc. But the gap is now only 2.1 to Charles Leclerc, and as is quite common in this series, my tyres were starting to get off. As you see, I opened this, I thought about asking Jeff about like my tyre status. I ended up not doing it for some reason, because I could just check them myself, like DIY time. But 1.9 is now the gap to Leclerc. It's going down now by about a tenth a lap. So Leclerc and Hamilton are not out of this race. I'm not uncatchable. I used to have the fastest lap to my name, but Albon and Ricciardo are starting to drop back. So you come to the end of lap 8, the gap to Leclerc is now only 1.5 seconds, and the tyres are up to 50% wear, so we need to just try and extend them for 2 more laps, and then we can come into the pits. And the gap at the end of lap 9 is 1.3 seconds, I think, from the exit. Oh no, it stays at 1.5 because I had actually a good exit for the final corner for once. So that is definitely needed because we want to keep Leclerc out of DRS range. But Hamilton overtakes Leclerc now, and he is now the man in P2. So he has eventually got past him, and we come into the pits at the end of lap 10, and it looks like it's probably going to be a straight fight between me and Hamilton for the rest of the race, as he is also pitting on the same lap as us, so he's not going to get like an overcut or anything, and we're not going to pull away massively because of an undercut. So it's all about which driver is quicker. And we're going to obviously go onto the medium tyres, drop back quite far in the field, but everyone else that's ahead of us still has to make their pit stops. And we're going to come out very close to Romain Grosjean, who is just ahead of us, and we are just ahead of George Russell, who has come out crucially ahead of Hamilton. So Hamilton has one more car to overtake to catch up to us, and we got a great exit on their corner compared to Romain Grosjean. We're going to have a look up the inside. We make a bit of contact, and guess it was a slightly aggressive move, but we then go through the next corner and we run slightly wide, and we get an exceeding track limits warning, but we got the position, and we're now up to P14 in this Grand Prix. Quite a few more drivers, including my teammate, are in to the pits at the end of lap 11, so that should give us quite a few positions. And Leclerc is also in, and he does drop back behind us, and also behind Hamilton, so he hasn't gained anything from an overcut. And we feed back into P5, obviously in a net P1, as on the following lap, Kvyat and Ocon, Giovinazzi, and I think whoever was leading this race, Stroll, will also come into the pits. And we retain the lead of the Grand Prix, with Hamilton 3.2 seconds behind us, so he definitely got held up by Russell and Grosjean, so us making that move on Grosjean was pretty crucial. And at the end of lap 13, going on to lap 14, we set the fastest lap of the race, and we're looking pretty good as we're slowly pulling away from Hamilton. And at the end of lap 14, we go even quicker, and we're now 4.4 seconds, 4.6 even ahead of Hamilton. But it does drop back to 4.4 because I think the Merc has superior straight line speed to us, unlike the Ferrari. But at the end of lap 15, we do not set a fastest lap, and the gap remains at roughly what it was at the end of the last lap, but we are both pulling away from Charles Leclerc, who is also dropping back, along with obviously Albon and Ricciardo, who had dropped back enough in the first stint. End of lap 16 now, and we're 4.4 still ahead of Hamilton. We're just maintaining the gap, because if we maintain the gap, then we win the race. And then lap 17, we're setting a couple of green sectors. I don't know whether it is going to be a fastest lap. We have pulled away from Hamilton. It isn't quite a fastest lap, but the gap's up to about 4.8 now. And we're just trying to make sure that we don't allow him a route back into this race, but he is going to try and find that himself, as at the end of lap 18 the gap's back down to 4.5, so this must have been his lap pushing. And we'll see what happens. I mean, it was roughly at this point that the length of the race started getting to me, because driving 27 laps around Russia, especially when you don't have any cars to fight, which is quite often the case in Russia, is very boring. There isn't really anything unique about this circuit, as most F1 fans would realise. I know Nathan really likes this circuit for some reason, some unknown reason. But at the start of lap 21, we're now back to 4 seconds ahead of Hamilton. And as we come towards the end, the gap is now down to 3.8. So Hamilton is slowly closing in on us. But we are just trying to maintain the gap, but that is failing. So plan A is failing because we can't maintain the gap. So I guess plan B is just to stay ahead of him, because he is catching us. I don't know whether he's catching us by enough to catch us at the end of the race, but we will see that in the upcoming laps. So we're just going to rotate through as it's 2.7 at the end of lap 23, and he's gaining a few tenths a lap, but only 4 laps to go, and he definitely needs to gain, well, he needs to gain 1.6 seconds probably in the next 3 laps to get into DRS and have one chance on the final lap. But he crucially didn't gain that much time on lap 24. 2.4 seconds is still the gap. And I must have missed this, but Ricciardo has overtaken Albon for P4, so looks like he's going to get another good result in the Renault. He's been one of the star performers this season. But back to our race, we did set a green sector 1 trying to eke out the pace, but that wasn't enough for the final 2 sectors. As Jeff just said, he's gaining us by 5 tenths a lap, and the gap is 1.5 seconds with 2 laps to go. So he should be roughly in our DRS at the start of the final lap, and as he is about a second behind us as we go on to the final lap, and I think I'm going to leave the final lap on board because this should be Hamilton's best chance of overtaking me at any point. So we go into turn 3 and defend that, but we do go slightly wide, and as we head through the long left-hander, Hamilton has so much more downforce, it seems to us, has carried so much more speed through that corner, and as we go on to the exit, we run slightly wide, and Hamilton looks like he's going to have a slight look up the inside, and we fend him off for now, but do run very wide, and, well, somewhat questionable our defence, and we do run wide again at the next corner, but we are still successfully defending from Lewis Hamilton. But this is the final DRS zone, and we do make quite a big mistake going to that corner and run very wide, and that allows Hamilton to get a better exit than us, and he is going to get DRS, and he is gaining by small amounts. He's about a tenth behind us, but I think we've just about covered it. He's going to go up the inside, and there's contact, and we've half spun it. He's going to still try and go for it, and there's front wing in there, and well, that was a very tense moment, but we've just about held on to the position, and it does look like at this final lap that we are going to win this race. So we head into the final 2 corners and through the final corner, and we have claimed our 3rd victory in a row, and it is P1 at the Russian Grand Prix. It did look like we did lose our fastest lap to some other driver, but Bottas wins driver of the day, and we're going to go onto the podium.
It's been an interesting Grand Prix, that's for sure.
So, a good result for us in the end. I mean, I didn't particularly enjoy that race, especially the second stint. It was quite boring and quite repetitive, but we did have a decent battle with Hamilton that almost ended in disaster on the final lap, when we almost spun round, but we just about caught it and managed to keep the position.
This result has had on the driver's standings. Well, the gap at the top of the championship has been cut down after a difficult race today for our championship leader. After an incredible day of racing, who was your driver of the day, Ant?
It's got to be Valtteri Bottas, a commanding performance that I think had the audience's eyes glued to him for the majority of the race.
Let's move on to the constructors. The current championship leaders still hold top spot, but that gap is getting smaller. Well, that was certainly an incredible weekend of racing. Be sure to join myself and Ant for more exciting Formula 1 action soon.
So we managed to win the race in the end, 3 tenths ahead of Lewis Hamilton, and only 3 seconds ahead of Charles Leclerc, because he managed to catch up so much on that final lap because of our squabbling. Ricciardo claimed P4, and Bottas must have got Albon on the final lap, or 2 laps to go or something. I wasn't paying attention to that last rider. He also stole our fastest lap, and Sainz and Norris took home P7 and P8 in the McLarens, with the Racing Points rounding off the points. Giovinazzi was close to a point, but not quite close enough, and he finished down in P11 with our teammate in P12. Pierre Gasly managed to beat the other Renault Esteban Ocon, who didn't match Ricciardo's highs in this race, but I think he did have a good penalty, so he managed to recover all right from that result. But Max Verstappen also had a terrible race down in P16, and Sebastian Vettel was the DNF of this race. In the driver's standings, Bottas loses part of his gap to Hamilton, but is still 38 points ahead from also the two Ferraris of Vettel and Leclerc. Vettel sort of dropping back in the championship fight because of his DNF. Leclerc and me both overtake Max Verstappen with his non-point scoring finish, and we are looking to probably get Leclerc by the end of this season. And then obviously the two Red Bulls come, and Ricciardo is solidly in P8. Perez and Sainz are having a battle for P9, and then there's Ocon on 40 points. Norris overtakes Stroll as 1 point ahead, and then Kimi Raikkonen in P14. My teammate Jack Aitken in P15. Pierre Gasly in P16, and hopefully our teammate, obviously Jack Aitken, can get some more points on the board, especially finish ahead of Kimi Raikkonen, because I think that should definitely be his aim for this season. I probably won't be re-signing him, I'll say that now, because he hasn't been great this season. Kvyat's down in P17, and then I think the other drivers are probably yet to score. I can't remember if Giovinazzi scored. Mercedes have a massive lead in the constructors over Ferrari, and then Red Bull, and then us, and we're sort of comfortably still in P4, Renault in P5, Racing Point and McLaren are close for P6, Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri are close for P8, and Haas and Williams are still yet to score.
That was an exciting race from our perspective. Let's have yours. It's looking like the championship is already won. Do you think there's still time for this to change?
I don't know. There is obviously still Lewis Hamilton in the fight, which you can never rule him out of winning it, even though Bottas does have a 38-point lead. I think with Vettel DNFing today, that sort of put an end to his championship hopes, and it would have been good to have a 3-car title fight, but with Hamilton still in it, there's still time to change. With this aero package, there's nothing that's going to stop us, but we've won the last 3 races, so it's very good form for us. But we extend our advantage over Alex Albon in the rivalry. 21-9, we're winning. When I took on this rivalry, I didn't think we'd be able to beat him consistently, and we've won 3 races in a row now. And we don't quite go up to level 12 as a team, but we are very close to. And for the team goals, we didn't complete 100 laps in the weekend, but we did achieve the fastest lap in qualifying, I think. As you see, we did have some damage deductions, obviously, from breaking our front wing in qualifying, but overall, another good day for us, and we won our 3rd race in a row, and well, that is where I'm going to leave the episode, and I'll see you guys next time for the Japanese Grand Prix.